All right, welcome back to the Boyz and Ball Podcast, where we talk the latest in sports. Let's go. We're here with Bailey today. We're going to be discussing some college football. Welcome back, Bailey. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Bush, for having me.
Bailey, you still have some of the worst picks I've ever seen in my life, but we're going to jump right into two of your absolute favorite teams from the past week. They matched up, NC State and Wake Forest. What you thinking? How'd you feel? NC State with the dub. Does that surprise you?
No, I called that. I said it. I said as much as I hate Kevin Leary and this NC State team, I said that. You go. I know the statistic, bro. As much as I hate this NC State team, I believed in Kevin Leary enough to pull out the dub in Wake Forest.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Boosie, I know you looked into this game a little bit. I mean, what'd you see in that game?
In the Wake Forest game?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a lot of miscues on Wake Forest offense. I got to be honest. Whenever I was looking at some of the film, it was just like little. It was just little mistakes.
That seems to be what has happened to the Wake Forest team. They were supposed to be driven by that offense, and in the past couple of weeks, they have just been turning the ball over and not playing to that standard if you're going to be offensive reliant to be able to win games.
Yeah, it's the couple turnovers. It's the concentration drops by some of the receivers. It's also some of the little penalties like the offsides and stuff. Like all these little things that just add up for an offensive reliant team. You can't be making those kind of mental missteps.
Yeah, absolutely. Jump into another team that kind of faltered a little bit. A team that we liked. Kansas State dropped to Texas.
Yeah, they did.
Robinson, man. Bijan fucking Robinson.
Bro, he could not be stopped. He was an absolute menace on the ground.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you 30 carries for 209 yards, that's going to be – when you're letting that up, you're probably not going to win a football game.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers barely had to really do his job. Since
He's the Ryan Tannehill of college football.
Which sucks because Adrian Martinez looked good.
Yeah,
it was a solid game from the Wildcats. Like just the Texans were able to put together the better game plan and ultimately.
Well, yeah, Martinez at the end of the game he had more passing yards than Ewers. I mean, he went 24 for 36 for 329 yards.
Texas did a good job of stopping Deuce Vaughn. I mean, he had 19 carries for 73 yards.
I think that's the big factor here. Deuce Vaughn has carried this Kansas State team with, what he's been able to do on the ground. They were able to slow him up, and Martinez tried to pick up the slack, but in the end, they fall a touchdown short. And that just results in Deuce Vaughn getting stopped because this is a Kansas State team that wants to run the football, and they want to run the football a lot. And when your best player in your system gets locked up, you're again, just like Wake Forest, not going to win the game.
So quick question, did Bijan Robinson rip off like a big run or something like that?
I think he had like a 70-yard run in that game.
Okay. Well, because I was just looking at the time of possession, and normally like when you have a guy like rush for 200 yards, normally like you own the clock, but
True.
Kansas State owned the clock this.
His longest run was 68 yards.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where he had a big chunk of yardage come from that. But okay, so that's why Texas didn't own the time of possession.
Yeah. And I mean, another Big 12 team here. TCU barely survives Texas Tech.
This Texas Tech team has played close all year, though.
I mean, that's fair, and it's a rivalry game, so you expect it to be a little bit closer, but you once again see this TCU team comes into games in the fourth quarter really close, and they always pull away. Now, they got Texas coming up this week, so that's going to be a whole nother question. Are they going to, how are they going to be able to pull away against a team that can run the ball like that?
Well, I think that's where you don't sleep on TCU. Keandre Miller's quietly having a fantastic season.
Oh, a great year, yeah.
1,009 yards, and he had 158 against Texas Tech. I think he'll do a lot of running.
I love Miller. The biggest question for this TCU team, Quentin Johnson got hurt. He is their best receiver by far. If he is not going to be healthy, I think you're going to see some of that passing production from this prolific passing game simmer down. And if they can't get it going with other guys against Texas, if he doesn't play, this could be upset alert.
Yeah,
I'd be
just-
willing to. I'd be willing to think that it probably would be an upset alert as well without their best pass catcher. It's easy to get some of those other guys involved in but I mean, like he's just such a prolific playmaker after he gets the ball in his hands. You can't really just replace that kind of ability on the field.
Yeah. Especially since Texas was before you go on, I said especially since this past week was his Max Dugan's absolute worst week at throwing the football this year, and so you really see.
I love TCU, but I love the power of home field advantage, and Texas is at home.
All right, JT, leads into the next.
Jump into a little bit of Big Ten action here. Michigan plays a close game to a Rutgers team that most people expected them to blow out. Now, the one thing I say that worries me about that, in the game where Rutgers kept it close in that first half, they had like 1 yard rushing. So they were just passing the ball all over Michigan's defense, scoring points. And it wasn't until Michigan's defense in the second half got some stops, especially in the fourth quarter, they blew the game open. But if this Michigan defense is going to struggle stopping the pass, Ohio State is going to kill them. If you can't stop Rutgers' passing game, you're not going to be able to stop Ohio State's passing game in a few weeks.
And I'll bring
Yeah, I
us
100% agree with
you're
that.
talking about a Big Ten team that played close. What happened in Northwestern, JT? Let me hear your side of that.
We'll get there in a second.
I know. I am well aware though of the wind and the
yes.
But yeah, Rutgers had a total of 14 rushing yards that game. 14.
Yeah. And they were. I mean, the final score looks like it was a domination from start to finish.
It was all second half. The first
it was
half,
all second half. I think the final score was like 52-24 or something.
52-17.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was 17-17 at that halftime. So I mean, Michigan took over in the second half, but if they get into a game with Ohio State where they are not able to stop the pass in the first half, I don't even think their second half comeback is going to be enough. Ohio State's going to take a big lead off of that. So I think I think this Michigan team is going to have to fix up this defense and fix that passing game because or fix that pass defense, because if they don't get that together, the end of their season is going to be demoralizing.
Is two things trends I've noticed with both Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan, if you can go back all the way to week 2 with Maryland, this Michigan team plays real close ball to the second half, just like they did here. And then Blake Corum just continues to run teams down. And that's where it blows out. Ohio State, good.
I believe they had 2 rushers for 200 yards in that game.
No, 2 for 100.
Oh, 2 for 100. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Ohio State's pitfall these past 3 weeks have been their offense hasn't gotten going to the second half. So are we looking at 2 turd sandwiches going at each other in the first half?
It's possible. I don't think it's going to happen though. You see the historic.
Is it home
rivalry
or away for Ohio State?
You said what?
Is it home or away for Ohio State?
It is. I believe it's home.
What year is it? 2022. I'm pretty sure in the odd years.
You guys played
It's home.
in Michigan.
It's home.
Yeah,
it's home.
Yeah, in the odd years, I believe Ohio State is in Michigan, and in the even years, they come to Ohio State.
Okay.
But you look back at the history of this rivalry and how both teams take this rivalry. Ohio State has a clock in their facility that counts down to the Michigan game. Both these teams are going to come out to play. They're going to come out to play better than they have, because they both have struggled in the first half.
Yeah,
and then both pull away in the second half. So there's a possibility it's a real defensive game in the first half and a shootout in the second half. But I still like Ohio State better. I feel like Ohio State's going to be able to stop the run enough on Michigan to force Michigan to have to pass the ball and then that's when you start getting stops and turnovers.
Boy, just make sure JT Tuilamoya, how you say his name, make sure that boy is fed to perfection. Give him his calories all week long.
The 5-star who's finally coming out to play.
Even last week, he almost had 2 interceptions himself. He dropped the one, I believe.
So, the kid's playing out of his mind, but that leads into Ohio State Northwestern. Now, this was terrible weather conditions. 30-mile-per-hour wind. You saw in warm-ups, Ohio State's kicker was kicking a 40-yard field goal. And when he kicked it, the wind was so bad, it stopped the kick and then pushed it backwards.
I believe at worst, it was almost at 49 miles per hour at one point.
Yeah. And it was in a downpour. It was raining. I mean, that's an ugly game.
Henderson's injury in this game really hurts.
Who?
Trayvon Henderson.
Yeah.
Not having him. Having that one punch of Williams and Henderson.
Yeah, only having one running back in this game hurt, but you saw Ohio State supplement that with more quarterback runs, got Stroud to use his feet, had almost 80 yards rushing. So, I mean, this was an ugly Big Ten game. This is one of those games that when the committee looks at it, they go, oh, how did Ohio State struggle? It doesn't matter the weather conditions. You got to beat Northwestern worse than that. But that is Big Ten football. You're going to have those games throughout the year where the weather is so bad, the game looks way closer than it was just because, neither team completed a pass for more than 15 yards.
Yeah.
The entire game. You couldn't throw the ball. So when you know that both teams are just going to come out there and try to run the ball or, run the ball and screen passes and stuff, both teams were loading the box.
Yeah.
You weren't worried about getting hit with a deep ball because the throw was going to be so inaccurate from the wind that, you don't even need to guard it.
Well,
so both teams were loading the box and it was just an ugly game.
Well, if you knew they're going to be loading the box, then how come Ohio State still gave up 206 rushing yards on the ground in Northwestern?
There was a decent chunk of that. Northwestern has a very elusive quarterback starting for them right now.
I believe the running back also had like a 60-yard or a 50-yard run. Their first touchdown run, or it may have been their second. They had a pretty big run out of that too. So I guess I.
So Evan Hall is the one who scored a touchdown for Northwestern. He's their running back, and then Brendan Sullivan, carried 12 attempts for 55 yards.
Yeah, and that's where a good chunk of those yards came from was they would drop back to pass. Ohio State would get pressure. He would make a guy or two miss and scramble and pick up 5 yards. So, because those rushing yards are taken away from the sack yardage as well. So
yeah.
The kid was playing a great game for the weather. With his athleticism and elusiveness, he was able to make some plays, got the rushing game going a little bit. But at the end of the day, Northwestern wasn't able to score in the second half.
Yeah.
Ohio State's defense once again came to play, and they locked up Northwestern in the second half and allowed Ohio State to escape this game. But this is still a game where I looked at watching that game. If the weather had not been so bad, Ohio State wins this game by 60.
Oh, probably, but that's not college football. College football, there's elements.
Yeah.
Next week, Indiana. I just saw Ohio State is projected by 40 points.
Yeah.
What do you
that
think?
That doesn't surprise me. They're going to come out firing.
Hit the under, maybe?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
JT, remember when we joked about playing Northwestern last week, and we jokingly said I should take the under again? And
you remember when you picked Iowa and you said take the under, and then Ohio State.
Yeah, and then Iowa beat you like 62-3 or something like that, right?
I think that was like 3 years ago, so that's like a whole different thing.
Oh, God.
It happened in NCAA 14 last night. I mean.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I didn't realize that's where we were getting our stats from.
That's where Bailey gets
I thought you knew the statistics.
I knew the statistics, bro.
Well, that's also where he gets all his bets from. He just goes listen to NCAA.
Yeah, I just go to my Road to Glory and see what happened last week and make some picks off that.
Yeah, so hopefully it's correct.
Makes sense.
But let's jump to the last Big Ten team we had to talk about. Michigan State upsets Illinois. Now, I don't know if this really surprises anybody. This is a Brett Bielema team that's going to play Wisconsin football. That's where he coached at before. They're going to run the ball hard, play solid defense. In the end, they're just not as talented as those Big Ten East teams. They're having a good year, but they're beating up on the West, which is not a good division this year. It's very poor.
Who? It's the ACC.
Yeah. So Illinois, it doesn't surprise me. They're going to lose to Michigan in 2 weeks. So I expect Illinois to have 3 losses going into the Big Ten championship game. So
I'm predicting more. I honestly have Purdue this weekend.
Do you think Purdue's going to get them?
Purdue is a fantastic team, and their receiver Chandler Jones, again, another sleeper pick. If the Heisman wasn't such a running back quarterback position, this is a receiver I'm not saying is up there with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison, and fucking Jordan Addison. He's quietly having a fantastic season.
Well, it seems like Purdue continuously puts out that receiver. You look at Rondale Moore, David Bell just got drafted to the Browns. They seem to have that one really technical, great route running receiver on their team.
Well, he was a transfer from Iowa, which hurts them. I remember he ate Penn State alive week 1.
So here are my thoughts on the Michigan State Illinois game, right? So I think this was a game that Michigan pretty much lost in most of the statistical categories because Illinois they just needed a couple of lucky breaks, but Illinois had more passing yards than they did. They had more rushing yards than they did. Michigan State barely just hung on because of maybe some of the talent on their team. But if you're getting blown out in both statistical categories for running and passing the ball, that offense is barely making any moves. And I don't understand how this was a game that Illinois lost just due to a little bit of lack of execution and maybe a little bit of, a couple things not going their way throughout the game.
Yeah, I think this Michigan State team also came in fired up this week. They had just gotten beat down by Michigan the week before. They're trying to salvage their season, try to get bowl eligible. So I think they played with a chip on their shoulder as well. And I mean, it was a close game, came down to the wire, but in the end, Michigan State is still a better team than Iowa. The Big Ten West is just awful.
So my one thing
I agree with that entire statement, but like you can't be going into games and expecting to win a lot of games if you're not leading in passing or rushing yards. If you're losing in both, you're not going to win a lot of games. You're just not.
Yeah, and they lost the turnover margin.
Yeah, so like they literally lost almost all 3 facets of the game, being offensive, rushing, passing, and turnovers. They literally lost all 3 of those, but they still escaped with the win. Yeah. So I guess kudos to Michigan State, but like this was definitely Illinois had a chance to win this game, I think.
So one thing I was going to say though is I feel like this loss actually hurts, either Ohio State or Michigan a whole bunch because of the fact is if say Illinois did beat Michigan State, and probably still lost to Michigan, and then in the Big Ten championship, either played Ohio State or Michigan, but at that time was then ranked, say like 15 or something like that, like somewhere up in there, it would make it a much better win for Ohio State or Michigan and help them, maybe secure that, like 2 or 1 or, move from 4 to 3 or something like that.
Yeah. The only way for Illinois, who is likely going to be the contender out of the West, to have a good rank by the time that game comes around is for them to beat Michigan.
Yeah,
but if they beat Michigan, everything's thrown into chaos, and all of these scenarios about a good win doesn't really matter.
It only matters for Ohio State then, but unless of course Ohio State then lost to Michigan, then then the whole
which would just be absolute chaos.
The biggest,
All right.
Out of nowhere, Iowa's Big Ten champion. I mean,
well, of course.
Bound to happen.
Yeah, okay. Well, a little jump back to the ACC for a quick second. A game that I think both me and Bailey are not surprised. Notre Dame absolutely shellacked Clemson. And this was bad. This was off the gate, block punt return for a touchdown. They had a pick 6 late in the game. Clemson was dominated in every aspect of the game. You're playing against a Notre Dame team that can't pass the ball, yet you let them run the ball all over you.
Yeah, they had 2 rushers that were over 100 yards in that game. Clemson didn't put up any points through the first 3 quarters of the game. Nothing was really picking up for Clemson. Notre Dame had one guy had 2 picks for him. It was Morrison, I think, had 2 interceptions, 2 rushes over 100 yards. Like, if this Clemson team is as real as people say it is, they shouldn't be doing stuff like this.
Now, we should say, talking about Morrison for a quick second. So his defensive coordinator was Sauce Gardner's defensive coordinator at Cincinnati last year. He is a freshman.
Okay.
And after the game, he said, watch out for this kid. He's up next. That he's in the same category as Sauce and some of those top corners.
Morrison is pretty doggish.
So, I mean, and you look, the thing that concerns me about this Clemson team, they've looked bad against the even remotely competitive teams that they should have blown out. They're barely winning. And then they've lived off of like subbing in a backup quarterback to come back sometimes. They try that against Notre Dame, and he immediately gets hit, throws a pick.
I just don't think DJ Oogie Cookie is him. I just really
DJ Oogie Cookie? Yeah.
Yeah, it's DJ Oogie Cookie. And I truly think this game is just Notre Dame finally getting some luck of the Irish. Drew Pine only had 85 passing yards. They only had 3 receivers catch a ball.
Yeah.
Usually they had 3 receivers that caught a ball. Again, like they said, you only had 2 receivers that were rushing over 100 yards. The quarterback himself was averaging 6.3 yards a carry. I mean, it was just a lot of running and a lot of Clemson beating Clemson.
Yeah, and Notre Dame just playing good defense, which is what we talked about last week, that the only reason Ohio State was able to beat Notre Dame was because they stopped the run. And then once you stop the run, the Notre Dame offense stalls, and then your offense can get going because you can force that Notre Dame defense to have to play a lot of snaps because it is a good defense.
Yeah.
The problem is Clemson couldn't stop the run. You know a team's going to stop. A team like Notre Dame is one-dimensional, completely one-dimensional. They're only going to run the football, and you give a 5.6 yards a carry to their team on 47 carries. This is a Clemson team to me that shows the dynasty is over.
Yeah.
This is a team in decline. They're just getting worse. Over the last 3 seasons, they've just been getting worse and worse. Since Trevor Lawrence left, they are in hard decay. This team is falling apart. Offensive line's garbage. Defense isn't getting enough stops, and they're relying on the elite athleticism of their running back and wide receivers to carry them to victories. And against good defenses, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Clemson. We've been saying this for the past 6 weeks. They're just skating by. And they're in decay. And I would not expect them to be ranked next year.
I expect them to be ranked because it's Dabo Swinney.
They're still Clemson, yeah.
They're still Clemson. They're still going to be ranked, but they're not going to start at 3 like they did this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see them still in the top 10?
I think they still start in the top 10, but I think they're going to start somewhere around like that 7 to 10 range. And it's probably going to be a little overhyped. But then the same thing's going to happen. They're going to beat up on the ACC. They'll probably slip up and drop 1 game somewhere because the ACC is that bad. And then they'll make it to the playoff, undefeated or 1 loss, and they'll get clapped.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Checks out.
So let's jump to another team that we have felt has been skating by a little bit this season. Alabama had to go to Death Valley and were stunned in overtime on a 2-point conversion.
The balls of Kelly.
Yeah.
Bama gets the field rush on them twice in 1 season. What's happening?
And I think if you look at that game, the way Bama was able to tie that game at the end, going into overtime, it felt like Bama had stolen all the energy out of that stadium. And so I understand why Brian Kelly goes for 2 there. Your team is playing well. You just broke off, a 1-play touchdown in overtime. You got to get out of this game because the longer this game goes on, the odds just keep going in Alabama's favor. So your team's hot right now, or your offense is hot right now. Take a shot and go for the win. And I mean, it worked out.
It did.
Mason Taylor.
He just dogged that game.
Yeah.
Led the team rushing, led the team in throw, obviously passing.
Well, I hope we led the team in throwing.
I led with the wrong stat. But like,
No, but
he
yeah,
didn't get help, in my
Let's
opinion.
talk about Mason Taylor too. The son of Jason
Yeah.
Taylor, playing tight end at LSU as a freshman, had the touchdown catch in the fourth quarter to tie the game, and then had the 2-point conversion catch in OT.
Yeah,
The kid is a dog.
dog. And obviously, you see his post game speech. I guess that he lost his mother recently, so that was a little.
Oh, dang, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
That's
Oh, that's
tough.
unfortunate. Our condolences from the Boyz and Ball Podcast.
Absolutely.
but yeah, Jaden Daniels did not get any help. I thought Kiki Butte should have. I'm sorry,
He
but if you're-
took he came to play in the second half, but he didn't really get a lot of targets in the first half.
what do you have? 5 catches, 4 catches?
7 catches, 51 yards. But yeah, no.
But his catches always came in clutch moments in that second half.
Which is crazy. Like if I think if you
LSU,
like look at the stats in this game, like you'd like really surprised that it was that LSU would win. Especially because, like you have Bryce Young who threw for 330 yards. It still had Jahmyr Gibbs rushing for 100 yards for Bama. And it doesn't even look like it should be close, looking at
Yeah, but
those.
LSU came with that great game plan. You saw that Bryce Young was not comfortable the entire game.
Yep.
They brought the pressure up the middle of the pocket, and then they had Perkins, who is their super athletic outside linebacker, and a QB spy on Bryce Young. So they brought that pressure right up the middle of the line, pushed the line back into Bryce Young, forced him to roll out, and allowed the more athletic Perkins to chase him down and force Bryce Young's probably 5'11", a 5'11" quarterback to have to make tough throws with a defender in his face. And in the end, it resulted in a red zone interception and enough stops by LSU to get them the win.
I don't think Bryce Young has the receiver help that he's had the past few years too. I mean, other than Jordan Phillips, I really don't.
No, the wide receiver core is definitely down. Their running back core is a lot better than last year.
Jahmyr Gibbs he's
but I think the other big thing for Alabama is that offensive line is not at the standard that you expect out of an Alabama offensive line, really controlling the line of scrimmage. Not always the most technical players, but so physical in the way that they're coached and the way that they play that they just dominate the line of scrimmage to get their guys that time to make the throws or, breaking off just, big run after big run. And this year they just don't have that. They're relying on, Jahmyr Gibbs to make a couple guys miss and then break a big run. So we're going to jump to the college football playoff, but speaking about Alabama, I still don't understand how they're still ranked 9. I feel like this is high for this team. It has a lot of problems. I think Bama is effectively out of the college football playoff unless a bunch of wild stuff happens. Yes.
I'm just saying Tulane put them in there, obviously.
I think they're just being generous that 2 of Bama's losses, one has come at a top 6 team in Tennessee, and one has come at now 7 LSU. But still,
yeah, but that's the problem with the SEC right now. The team that's going to come out of the West is going to have 2 losses, at least. So this is a situation where what happens if a 2-loss LSU upsets Georgia?
Yeah.
Do you put LSU in? Are they the first 2-loss team to make the playoff? Or does it go back to a couple years ago?
I think you give them the Ohio State, Penn State treatment.
Yeah, and you put Tennessee
in. I think you still have to put. If LSU 2-loss LSU beats Georgia, I'm sorry, I'm still think I'm taking.
Well, I think you still put Tennessee in over LSU.
Yeah.
Tennessee dominated LSU, so even if LSU beats down Georgia, I still think Tennessee gets that nod over LSU.
I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the new rankings just came out. So right now we got Georgia at number 1. They moved up from 3. Ohio State is still at 2.
Dude, they will do anything to not put the Buckeyes at number 1. Literally anything.
Anything. Michigan has moved up from 5 to 3. The Horned Frogs, Texas Christian University, moved from 7 to 4. They're in the playoff now. They're in control of their own destiny. If they
Top
win out,
six
they're in.
remains. Oregon
They're-
stuck to 6.
Four undefeateds left. One is guaranteed to go down. Ohio State and Michigan play in a few weeks. So I don't know if, unless a couple teams drop, if the Big Ten will be able to get 2 teams in with Ohio State and Michigan. But I feel like they're in a really good spot to possibly get 2 teams in. That still will come down to, does a 1-loss Michigan or 1-loss Ohio State get in over a 1-loss Tennessee? And I think that's really up for question there.
That's a debatable thing to discuss.
And I feel
Because
like with the way
Tennessee
the
has
committee's
looked
played
good.
it, yeah, I feel like with the way the committee has laid it out, they're basically saying Ohio State, Michigan, whichever one of you loses is not making the playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
There's just a lot of competition.
I
and
do think if Oregon, USC, or UCLA win out, they have a very good shot of making the playoff over Tennessee.
I think Oregon's it. I think Oregon's it.
I feel like, I feel like you have to put someone who wins their own conference championship, and if they're like 8-1, so like like if you have Oregon wins out and wins theirs, or USC wins it, and they're 1-loss team, you have to put them in above Tennessee, who's not even going to be in the conference championship.
That's the problem with the committee, though. The committee has been so wildly inconsistent in the way that they've ruled. Is it the eye test? Is it strength of schedule? Is it conference champion? Is it just we're just putting the best teams in? Every year they kind of make up their own model to put in the 4 teams that they want that particular year. So, and they seem to focus on name value, brand value more than necessarily, you look at the first college football playoff. Everyone said, oh, Ohio State only made the playoff over TCU and Baylor, who both had 1 loss, because it's Ohio State and they were a 1-loss conference champion.
Yeah.
Well, that might be true, but that's what the committee has shown. The committee would rather take a 1-loss Ohio State over, a 1-loss TCU. There's more brand value. It's going to make the games, make more money. The committee right now is in it for the money and brand value. And so that's why I think Oregon has a chance to go above Tennessee. But I still do think if Tennessee and Oregon both went out, Tennessee will make it in over Oregon.
Nah, it's still gonna be Bama.
Because their common loss. Oregon and Tennessee both have the same loss, Georgia. But Oregon's loss was a hell of a lot worse than Tennessee's.
Hey, JT, I've got a question for you. You remember who won that first college football playoff?
I do believe it was the Ohio State University.
Yeah, I believe it was too. So, just thinking about that, maybe we did deserve to be there that year. Just saying.
And I mean, we were the 4 seed, and we did put up 50 points on Bama. So, with Cardale Jones at quarterback, nonetheless.
Hell yeah.
Savage.
So we got through the top 6. It's, Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4, Tennessee 5, Oregon 6. Now the teams on the outside, we talked a little bit about LSU. Their path is a little bit tougher. But then at 8, you have USC. Again, 8-1. They have a very good chance of being a 1-loss conference champion. They'll get a good win against Oregon in the conference championship game if they do win out. So this is another team that still has a very good window of possibly making the playoff. They're at 8. They're at an outlier, but they have a lot of potential to move up.
I don't see moving up, in my opinion.
I feel like they lose to Oregon. I don't know if I just said that defense is so bad.
Yeah, it's just that's that Pac-12 resume. It's not Big Ten football, which they're going to be here soon. It just we talked about, they have generations that arise where they have that good offense, then they have a good defense, and there's that one magical year where they have both.
Well, it's the problem of Lincoln Riley, honestly. Even at Oklahoma, the offense is great. It's prolific every year. But that defense is always mediocre at best.
Doesn't believe in defense.
Oregon does have playmakers at the defensive position.
They do.
They have Noah Sewell.
Justin Flo. Yeah. They got 2 great linebackers. So I do like Oregon in that matchup, but there is still a window for USC to make it. At number 9, there's Alabama. If Alabama is going to make the playoff, it's going to have to be complete chaos. Their window is virtually shut. They have 2 losses. They're not going to play unless LSU somehow drops 2 games in their last, if they have to drop 2 of their last 3 games for Alabama to make the playoff or to make the SEC championship game. It's just not feasible. So much chaos would have to happen for Alabama to be able to make it in. It's unrealistic to even talk about. The one team that has the longest outside shot is number 10 Clemson. At 1 loss, if enough teams lose, Tennessee drops another game, TCU loses, Michigan, Ohio State is a blowout one way or another. Clemson has a chance to move in, but again, just like Alabama, they haven't played great throughout the year, and that 1 loss was bad enough. I think their window is virtually closed as well.
Now, I have a question. So, Ole Miss is ranked right behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And technically, Ole Miss is second. They're above Alabama.
Yeah.
In the SEC. Is there a chance that we could see, maybe Ole Miss sneak into that?
There is.
Ole Miss does play Alabama this week.
They have to play Alabama this week. So
they have to win. It also involves them winning out.
They have to win out, and if LSU drops a game.
But did LSU beat
Ole Miss? LSU beat Ole Miss. That's Ole Miss's 1 loss.
Oh, well, LSU has 2 losses, but yeah.
But no. Ole Miss is 8-1. Their 1 loss is to LSU.
Oh, okay.
So if they win out and LSU drops to Arkansas or Texas A&M, which are probably the 2 teams that have a chance at beating them, then Ole Miss would go to the conference championship game, which would be better for the Pac-12 because then you're going to have a 1-loss team playing likely an undefeated Georgia, which is going to look a lot better, and it'll open up the SEC even more into getting 2 teams in. If Ole Miss does win out, they have a better shot of making the playoff than if an LSU team wins out.
Yeah, for sure.
But jump into some of those games for this week. We just mentioned we have a number 9 versus 11 matchup. Alabama is traveling to Ole Miss. I want to get your guys' opinion here. Does Alabama rebound? They're going to have to go on the road and play another tough road game. Do they have the potential of losing to this Ole Miss team, or is this going to be a rebound game and they're just going to beat up Ole Miss?
I got to be honest here. I'm not exactly the expert in any form of the word, but I do kind of like Ole Miss in this matchup against a 2-loss Alabama team.
You can't count out Lane Kiffin. You can't count Lane. You can't count him out. And you have Judkins, Quintez Judkins, who's rushing for almost 1,000 yards as well. And it's at home. I think Bryce Young's been struggling. He has pretty mediocre stats for what was a Heisman, should have been shoe-in.
Yeah.
Gibbs appears to be carrying that offense for the most part. Yes, Bryce Young does make clutch throws, but this Ole Miss defense is pretty fucking solid. Other than to Tennessee, who they lose to?
LSU.
Other than to LSU, they really haven't been blown out. They let 45 to LSU, but they've beaten Texas A&M, Auburn, Vanderbilt, and they beat number 7 Kentucky, who I didn't think was really any good anyways.
Well, they have shown to be overrated as a team. Yeah. I still really like Will Levis. I think he's going to be a good pro quarterback, but that team, that talent around him is not very good.
I feel like if there's any year for Ole Miss to make a chance to fight for a playoff spot, this is their year.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they have a pretty solid squad. The Crimson Tide is not super solid. They're, we've seen better. They kind of have a very similar game plan that LSU does, with the way that, they played, with Jackson Dart being able to scramble like, Jalen Daniels did. So they have a very similar game plan. If they can come out, get the stops on defense, I feel like this is probably, Ole Miss's best chance to, make a run for it.
Yeah. And I mean,
good.
LSU absolutely exposed the way to stop Bryce Young. So if Ole Miss is able to repeat that, I think they have a good chance of winning this game. I don't see, like we talked about earlier in the year after Alabama lost to Tennessee, I do not see Nick Saban losing 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
It's possible.
I-
I have a hard time
Well,
seeing
that's-
it.
When was the last
I said-
time you had Nick Saban with no receivers over 500 receiving yards this deep into a season?
When was the
I mean,
last time Nick Saban? When was the last time Nick Saban had 2 losses on a season?
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
when
So, I mean,
LSU
it's
won the
been
championship? So it's been 2
been
years.
3
2 years
years.
ago they had 2 losses.
Yeah.
3 years. It's 2022.
Yes.
But yeah, no. But no, yeah, all I
Quick
say is
math.
like I feel like definitely like Nick Saban is
This many.
is a great coach, and like obviously he's probably the best coach of all time in college football. But I definitely feel like if there's a chance for some wild stuff to happen to SEC, this is the year to see it.
Yeah. And I mean, I would love to see a Ole Miss Lane Kiffin team make the playoff.
I mean,
I think
especially
that
with
would just be
Hey,
fun.
you can't count out Lane Kiffin.
especially with a quarterback with the name of Jackson Dart.
He's throwing
Like-
darts.
Jeez, but all right. Moving on to some more of our games. We got number 22 UCF versus number 17 Tulane. Green Wave.
We got a little American matchup here.
That just
2
kinda
ranked
gave-
teams out of the American. This looks to be like it's going to be a fun game. You got this Tulane team that's playing pretty good football right now. They're 8-1. They're not as high ranked as I would like them to be. I think they should be a couple spots higher, just based on that record and how they've played. But I like Tulane here. I think this is Tulane's American. I think they're going to take it this year. I like Tulane.
Yeah,
I take Tulane just because UCF is so one-dimensional. I mean, their quarterback also leads their team in rushing yards. Not that that's a negative for UCF, but I think if we've been talking about all night, just getting pressure to quarterback, especially with Bryce Young, if Tulane can do that and just shut down Plumlee, it appears that you can just stop UCF from there.
Yeah. I mean, UCF's been playing good football. They had a great game last week where they won late against Memphis. They beat Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. This Tulane team they look like the best team in the American.
yeah, and they got some very solid players. Michael Pratt, behind underneath center. They got Tajay Spears, who's been doing great work on the ground. They had a couple solid receivers, and Deuce Watts and Jaquan Jackson and Shea Watt. So they got a couple playmakers there, but like you said, this is a very solid team, and it's nice to see that there's actually a good team coming out of the American. I know we had Cincinnati last year, but it's not every year you see an American team climb the ranks.
No, 100%. And this is gonna be a fun game to watch. It's not gonna be the highest ranking teams, but this is gonna be a good game. And if you're bored with the other games, I mean, pop in, watch that Tulane game. It's good. That's gonna be a fun one.
Especially since this matters for that American championship, and because these are the 1 and 2 teams, Tulane and UCF. So this is this matters for that for who comes off in the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's jump to the ACC real quick. Bailey, the team we both despise, is playing against a pretty hot team right now. Louisville is on a streak.
They just they beat the shit out of Pitt a couple weeks ago, and then they just beat. Can you stop?
They beat Wake Forest a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, they beat James Madison, who did start off the year hot as the first. This is their first season in the FBS. They were ranked at one point. Beat number 10 Wake, beat Pitt, beat Virginia, but did lose to the 2-7 Boston College. So that was surprising.
Yeah.
But that was a close one. They kind of it was it wasn't crazy. I feel like Louisville's thing is it seems like every so often they just kind of find this little Lamar Jackson. It's just a guy who can throw the football, but spends a lot of time running with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, they went from Teddy Bridgewater a couple years ago to Lamar
exactly.
Jackson to
They just need to breed these type of quarterbacks over there.
Blake Cunningham, he's been on the radar for a bit. I mean, he also leads his team in passing and does lead his team in rushing. So, not that I would go away with what I just said about UCF being one-dimensional, but Louisville has been explosive.
especially defensively. They're forcing a lot of turnovers the past couple weeks.
They definitely got some ball hawks in the secondary.
And again, they're going against DJ Cookie, so I ain't
DJ
worried.
Uku.
I ain't worried.
I think this is another game where I think this Clemson team is going to be a little demoralized. There's no chance of making the playoff now, or very little chance. I think this is a hot team versus a team that could be down. Louisville might go into Death Valley and rough Clemson up here.
They got it. They also have a really good receiver in Tyler Hudson. He's got 800 receiving yards. So the corner's not going to have a cakewalk against Louisville and thinking it's just Malik Cunningham.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the big question is going to be, Clemson wasn't able to stop the run last week. Are they going to be able to stop the run with the addition of a running quarterback? That has been Clemson's kryptonite the past couple of years. When they went against some of those running quarterbacks, the couple Syracuse teams with I'll blank on the guy's name, but they were able to pick up first downs off their quarterback's feet. Clemson seems to struggle against that, and I think with the way Clemson's been playing, this is a Louisville team that can easily beat Clemson.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been a little bit of a while since Clemson's had some of those athletic sideline to sideline linebackers who could run that spy on that elusive quarterback. They just don't seem like they have that in their defense package.
No, I don't know what's going on with that defense, because if you look at that defensive line, it's loaded with 4- and 5-star guys. It's a loaded defensive line when you look at the recruiting and everything, but they're just not playing well. Clemson's offensive line is, I think they rank 56th in yards per carry. The team is struggling. The offensive line is not good. The quarterback, no matter which quarterback they put in, really hasn't been able to figure it out. I don't like Clemson.
They're last of their kind of solid cornerback core.
Yeah. But a team that used to be in the ACC, in the Big Ten now, Maryland, with Talia Tagovailoa is traveling to Penn State. Is Penn State on upset alert this week?
I honestly was looking at the spread today, and it's -10 for Penn State, and I immediately kind of thought it's kind of a little low. I really think that +10 Maryland is pretty achievable, especially with Tagovailoa, and especially how Penn State's played Maryland in the past 2 years. Before that, we used to just go and poop on them. That's what we do. It is common knowledge that Maryland Stadium is called Beaver Stadium South, but I think this is one of those games late in the year. Penn State recognizes that we are out of the playoff running. The defense gets a little sloppy.
Well, you've been out of the playoff running for 3 weeks.
More like 3 years. We're not talking about that right now.
More like you're never going to make the playoff.
We will. We just need the help of expanding the playoffs. That's all.
Oh yeah, but then wait, would you make the playoff this year even with a 12-team playoff?
No.
Maybe if we keep winning it, there's a chance.
We're 14.
Especially with our previous 2 picks with ranked teams going down. Just saying. But they have really good 2 people in Tagovailoa and Hemby. So they're also a very run heavy team, even though Tagovailoa has 2,000 yards. They don't have a single receiver over 400 yards.
They're very balanced.
It's very dispersed, and they really like to run those tight end packages, Big Ten football. So that's gonna be one to look out for. Yeah, but I think Maryland +10 is pretty good. I think this is a game you have to watch, especially Penn State, because if you watch the beginning of the season, Ohio, Northwestern, we really do like to have these crappy teams walk into Beaver Stadium and hold us to 13 points until half, even later.
It's the Sean Clifford special.
Yeah. 7 interceptions.
Beautiful.
Just beautiful.
All right. Well, we'll jump to your favorite team, Oregon. Has a top 25 matchup against Michael Penix in Washington. That Washington offense looks to be very good. They've been putting up a lot of stats, but they've dropped a couple games. Is this a game that could go into a shootout, or do you think Oregon stomps this one?
Or other than the addition of Morrison, I think this is going to be a shootout. You can't ignore Penix is leading the FBS and passing by a huge margin. He has 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I don't think you can ignore that. It's like going into Kansas City and trying to ignore Patrick Mahomes.
No, he's playing out of his mind.
But so is Bo Nix, in my opinion. Bo Nix is playing out of his fucking mind. I really think that this Oregon offense is too much for Washington to handle, but I don't know if I can confidently say that the Oregon defense can handle Washington and manhandle them at least. I think that Oregon could easily win this game, but I don't know if they have the willpower to manhandle Penix. It really depends on those linebackers. If you looked how they played against Georgia, I know it was week 1. They look clueless. They're running into each other, trying to get to coverage, and when they're trying to run down the line and try to make block tackles, again, they're tripping over their own linemen. I think it comes down to that linebacker core. They have a pretty solid cornerback core, but I would not ignore Penix in this game.
Okay. So you got Oregon by how much here?
They have a line of Oregon minus 13.5 right now. I think I can take easily Oregon safely in my heart minus 6.5.
Okay. All right, Dan, we'll jump to your favorite team. Just moved up into the top 4.
Tennessee?
TCU is traveling to Texas.
I don't know who to throw the horns up for.
Them horned frogs. That's
Horns down. Horns
Horned
down.
frogs.
But no, I don't think this is a team that TCU drops. I think this game is gonna be. It's still gonna be a close game because I feel like Texas has gotten hot in these past couple of games they've played, especially with their big win against Kansas State. But I still feel like this is business as usual for TCU. They're gonna come in, they're gonna get the job done, and they're gonna get another top 25 win and secure that number 4 slot going into the playoffs.
Well, let's ask this question. TCU has been playing very close games until the fourth quarter where they pull away. If they do that against Texas, I don't really like their chances here.
I do not think this is a TCU takes care of business type of game. This is at home in Texas. This is a Texas versus Texas game. This is going to be close. You have 2 running backs who are just going to get fed the ball 300,000 times. I think this is an easily winnable game for Texas. They have Xavier Worthy. Quinn Ewers, when he's been healthy, has looked serviceable.
He's looked pretty good.
Looked pretty good.
Yeah,
and whenever Xavier Worthy plays well and they have that pass game, you can't stop Bijan Robinson. You just can't stop him.
I'm just saying Quinn Ewers has let me down too many times, in gambling. So, I mean,
you're holding right back against that Alabama game in which they technically should have won and could have won if they had Ewers. Then
and the Texas Tech game where Texas lost to Texas Tech. So I mean, I don't know. And they lost the Red River Rivalry to Oklahoma State. It just happened.
Red River Rivalry is between Oklahoma.
Well, they lost the Oklahoma State game though.
Yeah, Texas shat on Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't close. It was bad.
But I think Dylan Gabriel didn't play in that game, which is
that was.
It was like 35-0 by half. It was
ugly.
But no, anyway, I still like Tech. I like TCU in this game. It's just
I'm gonna ride with young Danny D over here. I'm also gonna take them Horned Frogs over this Texas team.
Okay. All right. Well, the last game we have here.
Horned Frogs team's chances.
The last game we have here. North Carolina at Wake Forest. Who you got, Bailey?
I got Carolina. Drake May has looked pretty good past week. I took them last week. Guess what? They got the dub because I don't take trash picks. Fuck you, JT. I like Drake May. I'm riding North Carolina in this game.
Okay. Yeah, I like North Carolina here. I think the North Carolina makes for an interesting ACC championship. They're a 1-loss team. They're only ranked at 15 right now. But if they run the table and a little bit of chaos happens in that top 10, they do have a wild outside shot at the playoff if, Notre Dame beats USC. Oregon drops a game. UCLA drops another one. You take out the Pac-12. North Carolina could make a run. They defeat Clemson in the ACC championship game. There are wild outside shots where North Carolina could make a play for the playoff, and I think that's going to start this week. They have not played great defense, but this is going to be a game where Wake Forest has proven over the last couple of weeks If you come with the right defensive game plan, they will turn the ball over. So I want to see North Carolina come out here, play their brand of offense, but also that defense to start taking a step up because that's what's going to need to happen if they're going to make a run.
See, I just don't know if NC State has the ability to make a run for the playoffs without Devin Leary.
No. North Carolina,
North Carolina.
not
I was
NC
like-
State. North
Yeah,
Carolina.
I read your thing. You wrote NC State right there, and that's what got me confused. I was reading
Well,
it wrong.
no, because Wake Forest played NC State last week.
Oh, okay,
They
yeah,
played
okay. Okay,
North
yeah.
Carolina this week.
By the way, didn't you say that you like Devin Leary with NC State, Bailey, and Devin Leary hasn't played since October 15th? I'm just saying.
Just saying.
I'm
Sure.
just saying. I just want to. I took that receipt and I like stuck in my pocket for like
Stuck in
later.
his pocket because Bailey knows the statistics.
Bailey does know the statistics.
Sorry. I still think Drake May, even if they do make a push for the playoffs, I think they'll still get upset. But Drake May is quietly behind Penix at second with passing yards and is actually first in passing touchdowns. So this is a very high motor offense, especially with Josh Downs. They really don't have a rushing game, which is kind of sad, but it's really run and gun.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they do play defense more.
well, let's jump to the favorite segment of the night, Bailey's bad bets. What college football bets you got?
Bailey's bad bets.
I love how the name gets more creative every time. Every time we just gotta get more egregious with the bets.
One game that I'm looking at right now and is pretty egregious, just considering we've talked about them pretty heavily. LSU is going against a 5-4 Arkansas at home. 5-4 Arkansas. LSU is only sitting at -3. Now, this is an LSU team that is just coming off beating Bama. We can spin the story any which way. They're going to be high off a win, looking beyond this game, and Arkansas stuns them. Arkansas starting off the season a top 10 team, falling from grace pretty fucking heavily.
Very hard.
I think LSU pushing that line -3. I still don't think LSU is a playoff team in my opinion, but I don't think this is a game they lose by 3. I think you push that any which way you want. Next one is I'm going to take the under in Ohio State versus Indiana. I'm joking. Okay. Now, Alabama versus Ole Miss, another SEC matchup. Alabama's -12 here, and we've all talked about Ole Miss. My little spiel, I guess. I would take Ole Miss money line for its value, sitting at +115. I think it's a little egregious. Alabama's not looked too good at all. Me being the anti-Penn Stater that I am, I'm taking Maryland +10. Sorry. And Florida State versus Syracuse, I'm going to take the over in this game. This is a game that's been – Syracuse has looked pretty bad the past 2 weeks. This is a team that we thought was going to shock us. They've lost 3 in a row. They need a bounce-back game. I think this is it. I'm not taking Syracuse to win, but Florida State's offense cannot be ignored too. I like the over in that game as well. My upset, again, is Purdue versus Illinois. I think Purdue gets it done against Illinois. Illinois is only at -6.5, so there's not a huge faith in a top 25 team versus a 5-4 Purdue. I think Purdue plays games close. They always have. So I take Purdue there. Next, we've also talked about Louisville. That's another one. And Georgia, Mississippi State. Georgia sitting at -16.5. This is a Mississippi State team who looked good in the beginning of the season. They really did. They lost to Alabama, lost to Georgia. So sad's on them. They're -16.5. There's something deep inside of me that wants to take Mississippi State +16.5.
You think Mississippi State was going to play closer than that?
It's so tempting. Georgia only put up 21 on Tennessee, and I know Tennessee is a top 3 team, or was a top 3 team at the time. But can I put you to this? This is also a Tennessee team that went and do triple overtime with Rip Boosie. This was a top 3 Tennessee team that should have lost to a unranked, well, at the time, 14th ranked, no, unranked Pitt in triple overtime. Pitt beats them. Tennessee does not have this miracle season in my opinion. So my bad pick, this is going to be a shit pick, but I just feel it deep inside me. Mississippi State +16.5. Sorry. And then my last upset pick, this is my week of the underdogs, is I really like Baylor at Kansas State. I said it last week, and I got it right. Fuck you, JT. Baylor is a team. They're Texas Tech. They just play close games and they upset. It's a team you don't want to shit on.
Well, there's a lot of people that think Baylor is one of the better, or is like the best or second best team in the Big 12.
I mean, they haven't ranked it. They haven't like technically ranked at number 2 in the standings.
In the Big 12.
Yeah, they have TCU, Baylor, Texas, Kansas State, Kansas.
So I really like Baylor versus Kansas State. Deuce Vaughn had a rough week. I think the skid continues.
Okay.
And that's my shit picks, JT.
All right. Well, Bailey, we appreciate you stopping by. This has been the Boyz and Ball Podcast. If you like the podcast, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate the support. Bow.